Hey everyone, welcome back to Nikki's Eye for DIY. I'm Nikki and today I'm part of a special challenge called What Would You Make? If you're new here, thanks for stopping by, and if you're returning, thank you so much for coming back. Now on to our first project. I'm starting off giving this flower dish from Dollar General 3 coats of the color Dusk by Waverly. Once that's dry, I give it a coat of crackle medium and let that dry for a few hours. I painted this candle white cottage by Folk Art, and I got this from Hobby Lobby. And I gave it a few coats. I carefully apply the same color to the bowl. If I don't get enough paint on it the first time, I kind of stay away from going over it again because that looks far worse than leaving it. The thing with crackle medium is you don't want to go over it again after you've already applied your first coat. Just go over it heavy the first time. I make that mistake often. I got this bird's nest on sale at Hobby Lobby, and I'm weaving in some pieces of grapevine that I had in my stash just to add a little bit of texture to my bird's nest. And then I glued that down to my bowl. I used a combination of moss, and then I glued down my little bird. I distressed my candlestick using vintage photo. I got these stamps at Dollar Tree, and I'm applying that with the same distress ink. I'm adding some greenery at the bottom, trailing upward. And I wrap this all around the base. Lastly, I embellish my little nest with some greenery and a few small flowers. And then I glued my stick to the bowl. And that completes our first project. I think it came out super adorable. This challenge is part of What Would You Make, hosted by Brenda at Rustic Lace and Kathy Joe at Kathy Joe's DIY. And our guest host is Tiffany at Simply Blessed Crafts. These ladies are super talented and creative. Make sure to check them out and our playlist. Now on to our second project. I stained this 12-inch wooden round I got at Hobby Lobby with dark walnut. The stencils that I'm using in this project are both from Temu. And I'm applying assorted chalk paints. I'll list them down below in the description box. I'm going to go kind of fast on these next couple projects because there's a lot of painting involved. I'm just going to let you sit and relax and watch it all come together. To add some dimension, I'm using a lighter mossy green over that dark. For welcome, I'm using plaster chalk paint by Waverly. There's a bit of bleed through, so I'm going in with a small paintbrush to fix that up and connect the letters. Off camera, I added some greenery, and that makes this project complete. And I think it came out beautiful, and I'm going to leave this in my entryway all summer. On to our third project. I'm starting off by pulling the paper off this Dollar Tree sign, and as you can see, I got it pretty wet. I'm using the standard size popsicle sticks, and I'm gonna use these to make my frame. Next, I made a stain using burnt umber and water. Once my pieces were all covered, I then put them on a towel to dry, and I saved the rest of the stain. I got a big box of these paint stir sticks on Amazon, and I'm cutting them to fit my sign. I glued down the first few with hot glue, and the rest I used Dollar Tree wood glue. I added hot glue to the last one because it's a little bit too wide for my sign. Off camera, I used a little more of that stain, and then I went over it with burnt umber and some water. Once that's dry, I'm going to heavily distress this using Cottage White by Folk Art. Just make sure you go in one direction and offload your brush. Your completed project will look more high-end, I promise you. I'm going to go super fast on this just so you can watch as I build up the paint. I'm going in with some carbon paper to transfer the words "silver white winters that melt into spring." I created this on Canva. I'm using my dotting tool to transfer the words over. And then I go in with my paint marker. And I do use my Sharpie off camera, but I went over this quite a few times. To adhere my frame, I'm using wood glue. Next, I'm going to fill in the cracks using some spackle, and then I'm wiping off the excess with a paper towel. I went around the whole thing using Dollar Tree clamps, and I just left that overnight so it would cure. And I sanded it all down. Off camera, I added burnt umber to the frame and then distress ink in the color black soot. Added a few stamps and flowers, and that's it for this project. I think it came out so pretty, and it reminds me of the movie A Sound of Music. On to our fourth project. I got this 2-foot board at Home Depot, and I'm measuring it to cut it in half. I used one of my small cutting boards for a pattern. I cut that out on my jigsaw, and I used my paddle drill to make the hole, and then I just sanded it all down. As you can tell, we're making 2 cutting boards, and these are decorative only. I'm using smoke gray stain and applying it with a Dollar Tree sponge. I like applying my stain this way because I can just squeeze out the excess back into the container, and I think it leaves a nice smooth finish. See how pretty they look? I'm going in with some plaster by Waverly, and I'm painting the center of both boards. I also distressed some of the board too. I went over it with Elmer's school glue. I seem to do better with school glue than I do the crackle medium. Everything just seems to turn out better this way. And then I went back in with some plaster chalk paint. That cracked beautifully. Okay, if you haven't heard of the DIY struggle, you definitely got to check her out. She has a channel here on YouTube and has a website where she sells her beautiful stencils, rice paper, and she has some other things on there too. This was my first time using her products, and I definitely would order again. This was my first time using the wave method. I think I saw it on Tiffany's channel, our co-host this month, and it was a little tricky at first. I got the hang of it, but it was a little tricky folding the plastic downward to push it up because it kept wanting to just flop back out of my hands. Once I got the hang of it, though, it seemed to transfer with ease. This is the satisfying part. Boop. Just like that. Look it. Perfect. And this is how she's looking so far. I'm going over it with some walnut distress ink, and I accidentally stuck it in the black ink. that I'm using for my script stamp, but it turned out fine. I was able to blend it in, and then once I put Mod Podge on it, you wouldn't even tell. It blended perfectly. Now I'm just going over it with my script stamp. I love this thing. I probably overuse it, but I love it. Any excuse to use the things we love, right? I got these little tags off Amazon, and I'm just gonna distress it using my finger with Plaster by Waverly. I want to make it look old like the board. I did the front and the back. I took out my letter stamps, and I'm gonna spell out the word spring. And I'm using more of the walnut distress ink. I wrapped jute twine around my handle, and I hung my little tag off that. I'm just gonna distress my little tag. I made a cute little lacy bow, or should I say a double bow. And that's it for this one. Isn't it so adorable? I love it. Let me know down in the comments if you do too. I'm going to go over my second one with some more distress ink, same color. And I'm using these rub-on transfers. I believe I got them on Temu. Yes, I'm using my script stamp again. But it looks so pretty, right? I want to lift this little sign, so I'm putting down a tumbling tower block first. I'm taking these half wooden beads, and I'm going to use the same distress ink on those two. I got these little shovels. I don't know where I got them, but I do remember they came in the mail. And I'm going in with ink chalk paint by Waverly, and I'm going back and forth between that and truffle. Then I incorporated the color Pewter by Lumiere. I'm going to use Aleene's tacky glue to glue on my little beads. I'm wrapping some jute twine around the handle, and I'm adding some ribbon to make a couple bows. I'm gluing on the scrap pieces of the buffalo check ribbon. I don't want to waste anything. I'm horrible. I'm adding a little jute twine to my shovel, and I'm going to burn off the little hairs. Once I figure out how I want to place my shovel, I then glue that down using hot glue. I'm adding this gingham flower to my bow. And lastly, I'm distressing it with some black soot. And that completes this project. I think they both turned out so nice. Let me know what you guys think. Which one is your favorite, or do you love them both? Because I do. I love them both. Okay, on to our last project. I'm using the same length board. It's a 2-foot board. And I'm painting this using pale ivory chalk paint by Upcycle. I don't want full coverage, so I'm going over it with water and wiping it off with a paper towel. I want to be able to see that wood through the board. I went in with the color Nimbus by Waverly, and that wasn't the look I was going for, but I worked with it and just blended it in. Then I went in with the color Mineral by Waverly, and that was the look I was going for. I want it to look whitewashed. Next, I'm using a crimper on this cardstock, and I'm using this on the cans you can see off to the side. Make sure you put your paper in straight if you try this, because if you don't, it's not going to come out looking right. I used my pinking scissors on the top. And then I just glued it down to the can. Just going to make a seam and then cut that off. I made 3 total. It came out so pretty. I got this lace out of my stash. It was a little too white, so I went over it with some distress ink to make it look old. And I'm just gluing that down to the bottom of my can. I measured down 1 inch from the top of my can, and I'm making a hole, and that's going to go to the back of the board. I evenly space them apart and use the hole to mark my board. I drilled down through the back, but my cans were able to move side to side still. So I went in with some hot glue and glued the bottom down so they wouldn't move. I didn't have any washers to put down over the screws, so I just put a bunch of hot glue. For the hanger, I added wire jute and then went over that with a piece of burlap. I felt like something was missing, so I went in with some twine and tied that around all of my cans. Tied it off into a bow. I dug out my button stash, went through those and found some cute little wooden ones, and I added those right on top of my bows. And that completes this project. This came out so pretty. And it's so easy, guys. You can make beautiful things out of trash. Then I thought, let's add some craft supplies. So I put markers, my Cricut tools, and some scissors in the bottom. And I love this too. And lastly, I added some makeup. I put brushes in there, lipstick, and eyeliner. I hope you guys enjoyed these projects. I had a lot of fun making them for you. And this is all of them together. So pretty. I hope these inspire you in some way. Leave me a comment down below and let me know if you like these. If you would make any of them, please let me know down in the comments. And please give me a thumbs up. It really helps my channel to grow. And before you click off, I'd love for you to subscribe. And don't forget to put the notifications on so you don't miss out on any of my other videos. If you stayed for the whole thing, thank you for sticking by, and check out the playlist. See what other creators made. There's so many fun things that you can make out of wood. And make sure to chat it up with me in the comments. I love hearing from you guys. And that's it until the next one. Go outside, have yourself some fun, enjoy the weather, plant a garden, or just craft. Bye.